Welcome to Astronomy Live. Apologies for the confusion. I hope everyone who wanted to watch this finds their way to this link. I previously scheduled this webcast a few hours ahead of time, but for some reason I can't get into that link to do the webcast. I can get into it to view, but Google Hangouts is not letting me in to start the webcast on that link, so I created a new one. I apologize for that. I don't know. I don't know if I was going to the wrong page. I tried the Google Help page, no help there. It didn't show the event being present. It's as if it stopped existing on my end as a content creator, even though it was still there to view. So I don't know what happened there, but that's okay. In any case, what we're looking at right here is Jupiter overexposed and its moons. We'll be viewing some satellites tonight. Hopefully it's getting dark enough now that we'll be able to see them. So tonight is all about viewing some historic satellites. And actually, before we get started, let me just copy this link over into the link for this webcast into the dead link, the one that won't let me in, if I can. And just inform everyone on Google Plus and YouTube to come to this page. And you watch, as soon as I try to, it'll give me the ability to go into it. No, I don't think it will. Nope, that's not what I want. I really don't like Google Plus's interface, if I'm honest. It's kind of crap. It's kind of confusing. Nothing's really laid out in a logical manner. And, I can't even find the YouTube link for it. That's no good. Let me see. Okay, that's the new one. Oh, that's really old. If I can find it under previously read. I can find it, but I can't find the YouTube page. Oh well, I hope everyone finds their way here. So, apologies for the confusion. But it's finally started. And we have a satellite coming up now. So tonight is all about viewing some old satellites that have historic importance. The first one is called Tiros 1. All right, the telescope's now locked on, but it's still in the trees. We probably won't see it for a minute or two. Increasing exposure. What you're looking at there are mostly going to be hot pixels. hopefully it will soon rise out of the trees. Should soon. So Tiros 1 was the world's first active communications satellite. It was launched in 1960, and unlike previous satellites, which would only send out a message, a radio beep of their own, or would act as passive communication satellite, Echo, I think it was Echo Star, Echo 1, was an example of that, which was basically just a giant metal balloon in space. Tiros 1 provided active communications. It would receive a message and then boost the signal and send it out again. It was powered by solar cells. It was a fairly small satellite, spherical, roughly, and provided the first transatlantic live broadcast. All right, we're now getting out of the... there's Tiros 1. There it is. So you see that bright star there. It's on your left. It's on my right. Oops. Let me try to get it centered up if I can. So Tiros 1 is in a relatively low Earth orbit. Actually, the altitude is very similar to that military satellite that exploded, the DMSP satellite that we looked at the other day. It's about 800. What was it about? Let me see, 800, oh no, it's even lower than I expected, 663 kilometers high, so it's even lower than that satellite. But there it is, Tiros 1. Now the telescope's going to have to pick up the speed, and I'm probably going to lose it here. I have to stop tracking, because... yeah, it's going to do a 180-degree turnaround. So, because the telescope hit its limit for looking north, it spins around 180 degrees. It takes it about 30 seconds to do, to untangle its cords. And that's basically where you lose satellites, is when they hit that turnaround spot. But what you're looking at there is a satellite that's over 50 years old and provided the world's first transatlantic live broadcast. Before then, if you wanted to watch a TV program, say in Europe, that came on in the US, you had to wait for the film to be shipped. But right now, anyone can be watching this webcast all around the world, thanks to the development of advances that started with Tiros 1. Oh, there it is at the top. Let me see if I can get it centered up here. It's on your right. There we go. It's pretty centered. So there we have it, Tiros 1. Looks pretty solid. I don't really see any evidence of fast spinning, or if it is spinning, the entire surface is pretty much the same reflectivity, and that's probably true. If you look at the way Tiros 1 was arranged, these solar cells were just positioned kind of all around it. You didn't really need to maintain a specific attitude to maintain power, necessarily. Still, if we get lucky, we might get a glint of the sun coming off of it and get a nice satellite flare. You never know. But right now, it does appear to be pretty solid in magnitude. Now, this satellite is much too dim to see by eye. You really do need a telescope to track it like this. And you need a computerized telescope to really be able to do this. Once again, I'm using Brent Bouchardt's satellite tracker software, and I checked online, and indeed, it's been brought back to life. He stopped supporting the software. He stopped developing it a few years ago, and other amateurs have picked up where he left off now and are adding new features to it, mostly features to involve automating the downloading of the orbital elements, make it easier. I'm running on an older version of the software and manually loaded the orbital elements earlier. but I'll post a link to that software in the video description. Somebody asked about how I was doing this the other day. They also had an LX200, and that's what the software was really designed for. It was designed for the LX200 Classic, and it does a very good job, I think. So I'll post a link to that in the video description after the webcast. The streaks you occasionally see going by, those are background stars. The satellite's moving at a pretty good speed across the sky. You probably heard the telescope's motors earlier. I mean, it really has to pick up speed when it reaches the peak of the pass high in the sky. Motors kind of have to hit their maximum velocity to keep up with it, and even then, it's kind of sketchy. It's just moving so fast. And in altitude azimuth, capturing the zenith, the highest point in the sky, is the hardest thing for the mount to do, unfortunately. But you get less vibration, more stability out of the altitude azimuth setup. So that's why I have the telescope mounted in altitude azimuth tonight, not polar aligned. Normally I would definitely polar align, but for one thing, I had to set up when it was before sunset. I started setting up, so. Oh, and the satellite is now setting into the trees in the distance over in the east. That's why it's fading out now. Excellent. Well, that's one satellite. We have two more that I intend to try to view tonight that are of historic importance. So that was Tiros 1, the world's first communication satellite. And, you know, that was a U.S. satellite. Even though the Soviets definitely had the lead on us in 1960, they didn't start utilizing space for commercial purposes the way we did at that time. And that's why Tiros 1, Telstar 1, these satellites were, many of them were built and operated by commercial companies like AT&T, RCA, Bell Telephone Laboratories, were involved in the construction and operation of these satellites. And so the U.S. actually had some historic and important firsts that we now take for granted today. These technologies are so ubiquitous that we don't even notice them anymore. But it all started back then, about 50 years ago. So the next one that will be visible, actually, Vanguard 1 will rise before, a few minutes before Telstar 1, but they'll both be in the sky at the same time. However, Telstar 1 will actually be, looks like it'll be slower to reach its peak of its pass, considerably slower, by about half an hour. Vanguard 1 will reach its peak, the peak of the pass, in about 13 minutes instead. So at about 8:26, it'll be almost straight overhead, 89 degrees above the horizon. So it's going to go almost right overhead again, but it will be traveling a little bit slower than Tiros 1. So it'll be a little easier to see, actually. Easier for the telescope to keep up. Right now, at this moment, let's see, Vanguard 1's altitude is 2,500 kilometers. And when it reaches the peak of the pass, it'll be a little bit lower, but still just about as far away, about 2,400 kilometers away. And keep in mind, Vanguard 1 is about the size of a grapefruit. And, you know, it's like a metal grapefruit. It's like viewing a metal grapefruit sitting in San Francisco from Austin, Texas. It's like standing in Austin, Texas, and being able to see a grapefruit sitting somewhere in San Francisco. And that's what we're going to do later tonight. In the meantime, we can put it on Jupiter again. Let me slew the telescope back to Jupiter. That is bright. That is really bright. You can see how much brighter Jupiter is compared to that satellite. Now, something else I've also been working on for the last couple months has been to digitally scan and restore some old NASA photographs, some original NASA photographs, many of which pertain to some of these first satellites, like Tiros and Telstar. And many of them are not even available online. NASA has a huge library of old film pictures, and they've only digitized a small percent of what they actually have, especially pictures that originate with one of the NASA centers, like Kennedy Space Center. Of course, the major photos of any given space mission, photos taken by the astronauts, those are pretty much all available online, but some of the ground photos and photos of launch, even of some of the Apollo missions, are not fully available. And I happen to have some of those. They're only available if you call up that NASA center and request it specifically. Say, I want this particular photo with this ID number. They'll scan it for you. They'll pull it out of their archives. They'll scan it for you and send it to you. But they have a huge archive of old film photos. And I happen to have, like I said, I happen to have some of them that were handed down to me. And so I've been digitizing those. And I'll be making a separate video that has some of those photographs. And as I said, many of them pertain to Telstar and Tiros, the Tiros satellite programs. So I hope you guys will enjoy that. It's fascinating history. It's I think forgotten history for the most part. Everyone knows about Sputnik, but these were pioneering satellites that pioneered applications that we still use today, and we just take it for granted. We count on the fact that we can go online and pull up the latest NOAA images of the weather and see if that storm front's coming our way or is not, is a hurricane coming our way. And back in 1960, we didn't have that ability. We were just developing that ability. I mean, it's an obvious point, but it's one that's forgotten, especially the fact that those satellites that pioneered this are still up there, some of them. Sputnik's not, but these three still are, and they're some of the oldest satellites that are up there. Now, the one we just viewed, Tiros, like I said, the altitude on that was, I thought, off the top of my head, I thought it was about 800 kilometers. It's actually about 650, 660. That puts it probably within the range that it will. I'd have to do the math on it. I mean, it depends on the drag coefficient of the satellite and everything else, but I wouldn't be surprised if that satellite managed to make re-entry and burn up in the atmosphere sometime in our lifetimes, actually. Vanguard 1's in a much higher orbit. It'll probably last a lot longer than we will, but some of these others are starting to reach the point that we're about to lose that little piece of history still spinning around the Earth. And so I thought it would be nice and important for posterity's sake to track some of these satellites and record images of them. Even though they just look like stars streaking against other stars, they're still important pieces of history, and I think it's important for future generations to remember how we got there. So that's Jupiter. I can zoom in on it. I'll have to zoom back out, though, before the next satellite pass. So let me check again how much time I have. Oh. I didn't leave my chair where I thought I did. Glad the webcam wasn't on. That was terribly embarrassing. Okay, so we have about 45 minutes till the next satellite rises. So I'll go ahead and zoom in on Jupiter. Get my headlamp on here so I can actually see where I'm going and I don't trip and fall again. That's better. We got a full moon right now too, but it's still in the trees, so I can't point at it. I'll probably get a request for that. So we got a nice view of Jupiter's moons there. See if I can figure out which one is which. Okay, so looks to me like, okay, so at the very top we have Callisto, and then just below it, right next to it, is Ganymede. Then on the bottom two, the top one is Io, and the bottom one is Europa, according to SkySafari Pro. So all four of the Galilean moons right there for viewing. Pretty cool. Is it just me, or are we lacking color here? What's going on with that? Let me see if I can figure out if that's is that a problem with. I mean, I guess the colors there is just not as vivid as I'd like. Might just because of my video. Might be because of my video capture settings here. Yeah, I think that's better. Oh, that's pretty good. So focus might need a little tweak, maybe. Yeah, that's better. Not a bad view. I think it could be the. Can't tell. It might be the great red spot there. Now, the stripes look vertical because we're in altitude azimuth here, so field rotation is a factor, and that's why it looks horizontal or on its side. But it's just an artifact of the altitude azimuth orientation of view. But I think that might be the great red spot there. At the on my end, it's at the top left. On your end, be the top right middle stripe. like the last of the beachgoers are leaving for the night. The place all to myself now. Pretty good seeing, pretty good atmospheric stability here. There's a little bit of waviness to it, but it's tolerable. It's not too bad. So enjoy the view of Jupiter. Oh, also, just a programming note update. I obtained written permission from Stellar Drone to use their music on my channel for webcasts, for everything. So, I don't know if I can make this work tonight. I'm going to work on this, though, and try to get it set up so that I can play some nice mood music with the webcast. Oh, do I not have it here? I don't. Well, it'll have to wait for another night. My library of Stellar Drone music isn't on this computer right now. But hopefully, by the time I do my next webcast, we'll have that. Actually, though, well, yeah. I'm debating whether or not to do an ISS tracking webcast on Sunday morning. I can't promise the weather will be cooperative. My luck will probably run out after tonight. We had a good morning the other morning on that military satellite, and now we're having a good evening tonight on these satellites, so I figure my luck's probably about to run out on that. But even if it didn't, I kind of want to practice run before I do it live, just because tracking ISS is difficult. It's in a low Earth orbit, lower than Tiros, so it moves even faster. And I haven't actually tracked it with my... I used to do it a lot years ago, but I had a different camera for acquiring the satellite. I would do a two-camera setup, one to acquire and one to record at high resolution. And right now tonight I'm not even using an acquisition camera at all. I have the refractor set up in case I have to go that route, but I don't think I will. It's a little bit easier because the satellites tonight are all a little bit higher in altitude than ISS, and so they move a little bit slower, and it's a little easier to acquire them. ISS is extremely demanding of precision, and so the best way to do it is a two-camera setup like that. And the camera I used to use for just getting it into the field of view of the main telescope doesn't work with Windows Vista, Windows 7, any modern version of Windows. It only works on Windows XP. The maker never developed drivers to make it run under Windows 7. So it just doesn't work. I have another camera, a newer camera, an Attic Titan, that in theory I should be able to use as an acquisition camera on the wide field refractor, but I don't know if that really gives me a wide enough field of view. It's a fairly small chip, and the wide field refractor, as wide field as it is not nearly as wide field as, say, a standard viewfinder. And I can't just strap it to my viewfinder the way I used to do my old camera. So I might have to use some focal reduction or play around with that. I don't know. I don't know how I'm going to do it yet. So like I said, I might need a practice run on that because I need to check it out, see if I can make it work without using any focal reduction, or if I do, you know, how much optical aberration can I get away with and still see ISS clearly enough to get it centered up. So yeah, there's just some stuff I have to play with to make sure it works properly under the new setup with the Orion refractor and the Attic camera as cameras to acquire ISS. So I'll probably do that one offline, but I will upload the video if I do get good video of ISS. So there's going to be a pretty good pass to the space station on Sunday morning, it looks like, at the moment. Of course, that could change in the blink of an eye if they do a debris avoidance maneuver or something like that. Even though it's a small change to the orbit, it can have major ramifications to what a pass looks like a couple days down the line. So that also makes it a little more difficult because ISS is more prone to debris avoidance maneuvers than smaller satellites for obvious reasons. It's got a pretty large box around it that they try to keep debris out of. If it gets within, I forget what the radius is of the station, something like a kilometer or whatever, they perform a maneuver to get out of the way and make sure it doesn't fly into their safety box. So it's not uncommon for them to have to dodge something. I mean, chances are between now and Sunday that won't happen, but you can never say with complete certainty. So if you're just joining us, we're obviously viewing Jupiter right now, but let's see. In about 45 minutes, I'll be starting to get reconfigured for Vanguard 1. Well, what am I saying, 45 minutes? Now it'll be less than that. About 30 minutes is when it rises. So in about 20 minutes, maybe, I'll start reconfiguring the camera and getting ready to track Vanguard 1. Now, I did track Vanguard 1 once before. I think that was probably a couple of years ago now. And put it with some still pictures. It was an offline tracking. I tracked it and put it with some still pictures I had shot at the Kansas Cosmosphere. If you go to the Kansas Cosmosphere, which is just in the middle of nowhere, Kansas, I mean, I love it. I love it. It's a fantastic place. But it's kind of in a strange location. You wouldn't expect to find a spacecraft museum in the middle of Kansas, but it's one of the best collections you're going to find of especially Soviet memorabilia and artifacts of the early space race from both sides, from both the U.S. and the Soviet side. And it's really just one of the best space museums in the nation. And they happen to have an actual backup satellite from the Vanguard program that looks just like Vanguard 1. And it's really amazing to go there and see that thing, because you see how incredibly small this little satellite is. So it's really amazing to be able to see it at all. Not just the rocket booster put there, but the actual satellite. In fact, I don't even know if the rocket booster put there is still up there or not, but the satellite sure is. But yeah, they have a number of amazing items there. Another interesting historical fact about the space race that most people don't know is the fact that Yuri Gagarin, the first human in space, did not land with his capsule. He bailed out. When the capsule came through the atmosphere, they didn't at that time have the rocket system they now use on modern Russian spacecraft like the Soyuz to make the landing safe if he hit the ground, and he was going to hit the ground. Even with the parachutes, it would not be a safe landing. And so the procedure that he went into it with was to bail out at a certain altitude before hitting the ground. And that's exactly what he did. And so at the Kansas Cosmosphere, they have one of the capsules from that early program that put the first humans in space. And they have a dummy sitting in the ejection chair, and they display it in mid-ejection sequence, so you can actually see what it looked like. as the cosmonauts had to, the first couple cosmonauts had to bail out of their spacecraft before hitting the ground because it wasn't even safe to land in. That's how tight that race was, and people generally think of the Soviets as having this huge lead at the start, and they did, but perhaps not as big as you might think. I mean, they had to cut corners on things like that, on safety, and try to beat us, and they succeeded. But it's fueled certain conspiracy theories about cosmonauts killed in the attempt to get a human into space before Gagarin, and maybe there's some truth to the myths, but there are some stories that don't actually hold water about hearing cosmonauts pleading for their life and dying. I don't know. That I need to do more research on some of those stories, but from what I can tell, some of the parts are certainly embellished, if not outright fabricated. Stuff like hearing their heartbeat as they're dying. Like, no, you're not going to hear that. Even if you've got your radio telescope pointed and you're listening to the comm line, you're not going to hear their heartbeat. I mean, some of that is clearly embellished, but there's stories anyway that suggest that some cosmonauts were killed in the attempt and it was covered up and everything else. I don't know, but certainly there were accidents that we didn't know about until many years after they happened on the Soviet side of things, because they didn't exactly have a 24-hour feed of the missions when they were going on, and they could cover some degree of it up. It's not like the shuttle program where, the astronauts, they come back, they land, you see them step out of the shuttle, they wave, they show that, yes, we're here, we're safe and alive. These capsules kind of landed out in the middle of nowhere, Siberia, and when they did, one of them, they didn't make it back alive. It was one of the early Soyuz launches, and I think it was the Soyuz, I'm pretty sure, 90% sure it was the Soyuz program, and on the way back, a valve came open that was supposed to equalize pressure when they landed, and it equalized pressure to vacuum. And because you had 3 cosmonauts sitting in their tightly cramped seats, they didn't actually have enough room at the time for spacesuits. So they were wearing plain clothes coming back. And so they died. They suffocated. And no one knew it until the recovery team got to the capsule and opened it up. And I'm pretty sure that was one of those things that we here in the States didn't know about until the fall of the Soviet government. So it's kind of interesting. It's one of those things. They were really pushing hard to win the space race. Even if it meant, we don't need the spacesuits. We're not going to lose pressure in the cabin. Oops, And hey, the U.S. is guilty of that too, in terms of really pushing the limits of safety to be the first. It's kind of how the Apollo 1 fire happened, but it was an era in which we were willing to take that risk and make bold moves, and we reaped the rewards as a result. We made it to the moon, and eventually we retired the Apollo program and introduced the shuttle, and there again, that was a very bold, risky move. We probably wouldn't make it today. And I don't necessarily know if that's a good thing, that we're so risk-averse now. But I guess that's a debate for another time. The interesting thing about even the shuttle program, the first mission, that was unprecedented in terms of risk, because the shuttle had no unmanned flights. It could not be flown unmanned. The Buran that the Soviets built and based on the shuttle had the ability to land unmanned, and they did. The one and only flight of the Buran, which was the Soviet space shuttle, was unmanned. It never had a life support system installed in it. They never made it that far. But the space shuttle, Columbia, had no ability to fly and land unmanned. And that was kind of a design philosophy of the American space program versus the Soviets, which the Soviets were very big on automation from the beginning. And The American space program was more focused on individuality and individual achievement, the ability of astronauts to fly their spacecraft. And so, yeah, the first shuttle mission, you had John Young and Bob Crippen in the shuttle launching with it. It had never been launched before. I mean, the engine's been tested, the individual parts have been tested, but the thing had never even launched before. Even with Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo, every time we flew a rocket, it wasn't the first time we strapped a person in it. We tested the rockets unmanned before we put a capsule with live humans in it. Space Shuttle program, we suddenly didn't do that anymore. We didn't have the ability to. And so, here you go, guys. We hope the thing works on the first try, because if it doesn't, you're not coming back. And, I mean, there were some close shaves there. My understanding is that the sound of the engines, you know, is so powerful. That's why they have to use the water suppression system. It's not just to put out fires on the pads. It's actually to dampen the sound, because it can damage the shuttle, or could have damaged the shuttle. I guess it's all past tense now, but it could have damaged the shuttle when they lit the engines if they didn't have the sound suppression system, the water suppression system. And on that first launch, the shockwave actually did damage the body flap, which is on the back end of the shuttle, kind of underneath the engines. And, you know, it could have done potentially more damage if it had done damaged the ailerons and the rest of the control surfaces. They wouldn't have made it back, or they would have had to bail out. But they probably wouldn't have made it back. So there was that. There were tiles lost off the shuttle. The tile adhesive didn't work as well as they'd hoped. I mean, there were real serious risks on that mission, and we don't tend to think about that anymore because it made it back safely. So of course it was all fine. But that was probably one of the riskiest missions we ever did. And now, of course, with the Orion program, they've already had the first unmanned flight test, and there was going to be another unmanned flight test before we actually put people in it. An unmanned flight test with the SLS rocket, which is really more to test that rocket's abilities, but I think it'll also test the capsule as well. I mean, that's it's going to be pretty extensive testing on that capsule before we put people in it. SpaceX is supposed to test their Dragon version 2 capsule this year. I think they're going to do the pad abort test. At least they're supposed to do it in the near future. So it's an exciting time. New space programs coming into fruition here, but I mean, we'll see. I still am hesitant and nervous for commercial space flight, simply because the first accident that happens, who knows? The Congress could pull the plug on the whole thing, or the president could pull the plug on the whole thing and say, no, it's not. We're not there yet. We're going to have to sit on the ground and hitch rides from the Russians for another 10 years. You know, who knows? But actually, that's partly why we're still buying flights. We're still buying seats on the Soyuz into the future, even into 2018, when we're supposed to start to have commercial capability to get to the space station with SpaceX and Boeing. SpaceX and Boeing were awarded the contract to develop new capsules to fly astronauts to and from the space station, so we don't have to be reliant on the old Soyuz and buying seats from the Russians. But we're still buying seats because we're not putting all our eggs in the basket of commercial spaceflight. Even now, NASA is showing signs of reservations about that. So, guess we'll just have to see how it goes. Anyway, we've got about another 15, 16 minutes here. No, we got more than that. We got 19 minutes till Vanguard 1 rises. looking at the moon by eye, it looks like there might be some just very thin, thin clouds, high altitude thin clouds around there in the south. I can't tell how prevalent that is elsewhere in the sky. Stars do look a little dim, but that might just be because of all the moonlight. I mean, to be honest, normally I don't come out to the observing site on a full moon night like this. A lot of people enjoy the full moon, but there's no point driving all the way out to a dark sky site if it's just going to be washed out with moonlight. When the moon gets higher, gets over the trees, I can point there and we can take a look. I don't find the moon to be as interesting to look at on full moon nights with a telescope anyway. There's not as much, you can't really see much of the Terminator, you can't see many shadows on the moon. Most of it's pretty much just flat and featureless looking. It's harder to see some of the craters and personal preference. I'm pretty sure it's a minority preference, but I swear if you did amateur astronomy as long as I have and with a telescope, you'd probably feel the same. It's easier to appreciate the moon on a night where it's not quite all the way full, and you can see the lunar terminator and see all those magnificent shadows going into the craters. It's more interesting. But yeah, a little update as far as the military satellite is concerned. The Defense Meteorological Satellite Program satellite that exploded. As we saw, most of it's still there, and they're now thinking that it was probably a battery, that it was the electrical system. That's where they detected it overheating, and then they lost the attitude control. So they're thinking it might have been a battery that exploded. These things are, they go through pretty wild temperature swings as they sit in the sunlight and then go into the Earth's shadow repeatedly for 20 years. So there's a lot of thermal cycling there, and yeah, it's possible. It's not the first satellite of that type to explode, but the other one had been basically safed. They had shut down the electrical system. It was pretty much a completely dead satellite. The only thing they think that could have exploded on the previous one was a few kilograms of hydrazine. And so, because of that, some of the initial speculation, anyway, looked at the history of that type of satellite and the fact that the hydrazine had exploded before. But it appears this time it might have had a different cause. I still personally think that it might have been initiated by a small impact, maybe with some small untracked satellite debris. Anything smaller than about 10 centimeters, they're not really going to be able to track by radar in space. So any little bolt or even a paint fleck off another satellite can cause damage if it strikes, particularly if it strikes the right spot. So all it would take is a tiny little bolt of something that had flown off another satellite, smashing into it right where the battery is, and yeah, that might cause an explosion. And T.S. Kelso, who runs Celestrak, was the first to notice that this satellite had had a debris event, and that the event appeared to have occurred around the time it was over Antarctica. And of course, it's a satellite in a polar orbit, which means it's got a high inclination. It goes over the poles. And depending on other factors of the orbit, the longitude, the ascending node, and argument of perihelion, perigee, all that stuff determines the shape of the orbit. It can have very different orbit from other polar orbiting satellites, but the one place where they all intersect is over the poles, obviously. So that is the region where you have the highest concentration of polar orbiting satellites, because that's where all those orbits are going to intersect, and that's where you have the greatest risk for impact, either with another satellite or with debris from another satellite. And so logically, it makes sense that if it were an impact, if it were initiated by an impact anyway, that would have been the location where it would be most likely to occur. So it just kind of makes sense that it could have been initiated by a small impact. I mean, they didn't see anything that they were tracking that should have hit it, but that doesn't mean it wasn't there. Just like the fact that they say, well, it's contributed about 43 pieces of new debris, to the known satellites. Well, that's true, but that's just the ones we know about. Again, bigger than about 10 centimeters. Anything smaller than that, we wouldn't know about it. So it's not just 43 pieces of debris. It's 43 pieces of debris large enough for us to see. There's a bunch of others that we can't see that are too small that are out there now as a result of this event, guaranteed. So who knows how much of that's out there? Maybe hundreds, maybe thousands of pieces of debris. And some of it's too small to cause serious damage unless it perhaps hits just the right spot on something. But it's a problem nevertheless. All right, we've got about 11 minutes now till our next satellite of the evening arises on the horizon. That'll be Vanguard 1, but it won't reach the peak of its pass until another 13 minutes from that point. But I still want to start to get on it early if possible. It's easier to do. It's farther away and slower moving. So in about 5, maybe 7 minutes, we'll take it off of Jupiter here. I'll put the focal reducer back on and we'll reduce the magnification drastically so that we can see Vanguard 1. Vanguard 1 is the oldest satellite still up there, and it was launched in 1958, and it was the first solar-powered satellite, the first satellite to use solar cells to provide electricity. And now, pretty much any particular satellite you look at it up there is now solar-powered, and Vanguard 1 was the first one to start that, so it's pretty significant for that. So that will be reaching, Vanguard 1 will reach the peak of its pass at 8:26:21 Eastern time, and it'll start rising at 8:13 on the dot, 8:13 p.m. Eastern time. Telstar 1, which is the world's first active communications satellite, will rise at 8:19 and 47 seconds. But as I said, it'll have a much slower pass, and that's because it's at a pretty high altitude. Right now it's only, I'm surprised at that, it's only 2,666 kilometers right this moment. I'm a little surprised about how long it'll take. I guess it's past perigee now. It's heading up. Its altitude is increasing every second. It's already at 2,700 kilometers on the dot right now. So yeah, it's gaining altitude pretty quickly, and so as a result, it'll slow down as it gets higher and higher. Vanguard 1 is actually past perigee as well, but it's only about 985 kilometers at altitude right now. So it'll be moving a little bit faster. But yeah, Telstar 1, I'm sorry, I said it was the communication satellite. Telstar 1 was the communication satellite. Tiros 1 was the weather satellite. I might have got that backwards in my head. Anyway, Tiros 1 was the weather satellite. Telstar 1 was the communication satellite. It will be setting at 9:34. So it's actually over the horizon for more than an hour of time. And obviously that's, that's somewhat by design. They designed this thing to have a looping orbit that would put it really far out there so that it would be able to provide line of sight for an extended period of time. It's not in a geostationary orbit. We didn't start doing that till later. We didn't have the rocket power to put it out in geostationary orbit yet when it was launched, but it was put out in this kind of elliptical orbit so that it could provide line of sight both to us here in the US and also people in Europe, and be able to provide transatlantic communications. And it enabled the world's first transatlantic broadcast. So, pretty cool stuff. That broadcast was supposed to feature President Kennedy, but he wasn't ready when the satellite was, and so they actually started with Walter Cronkite and some other journalists on TV. So good old Walter's face was the first to be broadcast transatlantically on a live broadcast. So let's see, Vanguard 1. It's now 6,000 kilometers away from my observing site, but it is 15 degrees below the horizon. But here in a minute, I'm going to take the camera off and set it back to the low magnification view. So like I said, I've also got some of these old photographs from Kennedy Space Center. Original NASA photos of Telstar and Tiros satellites from the Telstar and Tiros programs, and some of their launches and some pictures of the satellite. And some of them can be found online. Some of them are a little bit hard to find, and some of them simply can't be found online. And from what I can tell, I've looked, and in some cases I can't find them at all. So I'll be finishing up the digitization of those images and putting those into a new video, a separate video, and provide links to the high-resolution downloads so that they are available online. I think it's an important piece of history that needs to be preserved. As we always think about the early space race being dominated by the Soviets until we kind of took the lead with, started to catch up on Gemini. I wouldn't say we took the lead on Gemini, but by Apollo, obviously, we'd taken the lead. But really, even before then, long before then, earlier in the decade, we were already starting to implement satellites that would take advantage of space. And I think that's largely because of the capitalistic approach. We saw where we could make a profit from it. We can make a profit from providing transatlantic broadcasts and selling that to television stations, selling that to people eventually. And, here we are now. People are able to watch this webcast all over the world because of the innovation that the free market system has provided. But I'll get off my soapbox now and get the camera set for Vanguard. So Vanguard was not a communication satellite or weather satellite. It was just a very early satellite. It was supposed to be really the first American satellite in space, but the first attempt failed. They kept having problems with the rocket. And that's where von Braun came in, and he said, "I'll get your satellite in space. Use my rocket." And his Redstone rocket worked quite well indeed. It wasn't without its share of problems trying to get the Mercury astronauts into space, but they did so. finally did so successfully, and Explorer 1 ended up being the first American satellite in space, thanks to von Braun. The Vanguard program did eventually start putting its payloads into space, and Vanguard 1 is, of course, the first of that. Explorer 1 is no longer in orbit, but Vanguard 1 is still out there. A fun rule of thumb about von Braun's rockets, he was a bit eccentric, that guy. He said, I've heard it said, it is just a rumor, I don't know if he actually said this, but it's been said that he said that it's not a real rocket unless it's got fins. Real rockets have fins, he says. So, if you ever go to, say, the Kennedy Space Center Visitor Center, you're looking at the rocket garden, and there's all these rockets out there. If you want to know which ones von Braun was responsible for designing, look at the ones that have fins on them. I'm not kidding. Time and time again, you'll find out von Braun was involved in the design somewhere in the early, those early rockets. Didn't really need fins. I mean, if you've got vectored thrust, you have steering authority through the engines. Fins are kind of dead weight, honestly. But hey, he liked the look of it, I guess, so his rockets have fins. Even the Saturn V, it's got fins. It's kind of silly, but they let him do it. It was only on the first stage, so that extra little bit of mass wouldn't be carried for very long. I'm sure there was some justification for it from a technical perspective, but it's an interesting, it's just an interesting little fact about von Braun's rockets. I'm sure there's got to be some rocket he designed that didn't have fins, but as a rule of thumb, you can find them find them in a museum or rocket garden where you see multiple rockets. You can find them just by looking for the ones that have got fins on them. Right. So there's Jupiter Orion field with moons and Jupiter overexposed, obviously, but we're now ready to start tracking Vanguard, which is now rising over the horizon. We'll be in the trees for the first few minutes, but I'm going to start to get the telescope pointing that direction anyway and see how we're looking, where we're at. All right, here we go. It's right in the thick of the trees right now, but there's my headlamp. It's right in the thick of the trees right now, but it'll rise relatively quickly, faster than Telstar will anyway. It's already at 11 degrees altitude and climbing. I'm going to try to increase the exposure here because I know Vanguard is going to be much dimmer than, say, Tiros was. So yeah, Tiros was the first satellite to provide, the first one we saw was the first satellite to provide television pictures of Earth. And it was the first to provide data for forecasts, weather forecasts based on satellite data. And if you ever go to the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C., there's a nice model of the Tiros satellite sitting in one of the exhibit areas where they have some of these early unmanned programs where they talk about some of the early satellites. I forget the name of the hall, but it's over near where they have the rockets. If you come in the main entrance from the mall side, you turn left and you'll hit the hall that's got all the rockets in it. And I think, if I remember right, it's off to the right in that hall. I can't remember if it's on the bottom of the first floor or the second floor, but somewhere in that vicinity. You go in there, you'll see a full-scale model of Tiros. So now, you guys got to see the real thing here tonight, but if you have a chance to hit up the Smithsonian, you'll get to see a model of it. I might actually have an opportunity to be going to DC sometime in the next month or so for a conference. So if I do, I'll try to hit up the Smithsonian again and get some good pictures of that, as well as some other stuff. Maybe if I have an extra day, maybe hit up the National Archives again. I am working on Google Sky Mysteries Volume 2, but there's one or two things I would kind of like to get pictures of from the original film negatives from the Palomar Sky Survey to finish up that video. I didn't think I needed them at first, but it would be nice to have. So if I have a chance to go to DC, maybe I'll be able to grab that. So I've got it set to about 1 second exposures here. I hope that will be enough exposure time to see it. Now, this is just the little Samsung SDC 435. Usually I use this camera for lunar planetary imaging, but it's also good for satellites. Even dim ones, it can do a decent job. It's obviously not as high resolution as the S-Big camera, but it's real-time video. It's just a little easier to work with when you're trying to track a fast-moving object like a satellite like this. It's actually a surprisingly affordable camera, though. And so, as a result, it's quite popular among amateur astronomers, actually, because it's got a fairly decent amount of sensitivity to it and gives a very sharp image, as we saw with Jupiter earlier. So in just a moment, hopefully, we'll start to get out of the tree here. So where are we at? 34 degrees altitude on Vanguard. And another 5 to 10 degrees, I'd say, and we'll be I got pretty big trees to the west, as you can see, just because, I mean, yeah, we're at 34 degrees, and it's still not out of the tree. 40 degrees now. It's rising faster. As it gets closer to us, or to me, the observer, and it gets higher overhead, it actually gets faster as it travels through the sky, too. Range from me to the satellite is now about 2,630 kilometers. The satellite's altitude over the ground is about 2,000 kilometers and rising. Its velocity is 25,000 kilometers an hour. No, I'm sorry. Yeah, no, that's right, 25,000 kilometers an hour. Star just streaked through there. You guys probably saw that. So we are starting to get out of the tree now. Go to 2 second exposures. Might have to go hunting for it a bit. I hope we can get it. Don't really see it yet. Oh, you know what? Oh, did I? I did, didn't I? Maybe I did. I can't remember if I turned off digital zoom or not. Yeah, I did. Oh, what do we got there? See something? Thought I saw something. Moving the mouse all around here, trying to adjust, see if I can find it. Come on. Okay. Try to decrease the exposure down to 1 second. Because it's hard to see what you're doing when exposure takes that long. Now let's try this again. I think that was just a star streaking through. I don't see it. My fear is that it's too dim. I feel like something's not quite right with the brightness and contrast settings. Oh, what's this? Oh, thought I saw something. Oh, there's a star. I guess it might have just been a star. But come on, baby. Where are you? It's reaching 85 degrees. It's almost straight overhead. I'm not seeing it. Okay. I have to wait for it to get past the zenith here. Okay. Past the zenith. Still trying to find Vanguard. I'm not seeing these. Try upping the ante. Didn't have them this much trouble before, but part of that may have been longer exposure. I don't know. Maybe Vanguard blew up. I don't know. Star. See, I don't know. On my end, it just doesn't seem like the image is as bright as it ought to be. I'm trying everything I can think of. Without, I don't know. It's just strange. It could be the moonlight. Perhaps it's too bright. I did this before. I think it was a little bit darker of a night. But I mean, I'm panning them all around. Oh, thought I saw something. Could have been a cosmic ray hit. I don't know. It was just like one frame. I thought I saw a star. And saw it like it was being tracked. Come on. You're kidding me. You're killing me. I'm not even seeing many stars streaking through. That's what really gets me, is I'm not seeing what I expect to see out of this camera. Normally, you know, there's a star streaking through, kind of. And normally I expect to see a lot more of that than I'm really seeing right now. And I just wonder if something here is not set right. And I'm kind of losing the bottom of my histogram, which is where Vanguard would be. It's supposed to be fairly dim. Oh! I swore I saw. And the other thing is, I know Vanguard goes through drastic brightness variations as it rotates. So you can see it one moment and then not see it the next. It's a real trick. It's a real tricky satellite to get. Okay, well, what's our other satellite at? Telstar's at 26 degrees and rising. Vanguard's at 52 and dropping. See, there's something that vanished, but I think that's just a hot pixel or something. Well, if we don't get it tonight, we'll get it another night. I will try again, perhaps on a less moon-filled night. And also, perhaps with the S-Big camera, really bring out the big guns, because that will definitely get it. Samsung, this is pushing what it can do as a camera. The S-Big camera is a beast. It's a little bit trickier to try to manage that and the tracking at the same time, but... Oh, what was that? Come back. I thought I saw you. For a moment, I thought I saw it. Was it would have been your top right corner. It was definitely not a hot pixel. I'm going crazy here looking for, yeah, it's for me going crazy. A couple stars straight through. I'm not seeing it. Well, doggone it. That really annoys me. It really frustrates the heck out of me. So it was such a good pass, and I'm just not seeing it. And I can't tell if it's the camera or the moonlight or a combination of the two. There goes another. Is that another star? Or is that? Yeah, it's another star. This is when I need that acquisition camera. I should have put that on there. Too late now. But even then, Vanguard is so small and tiny, I have serious doubts you would see it at all in the wide field refractor. I've only ever seen it with the main telescope. You pretty much have to either land on it or forget about it. And I think we're going to have to give up on Vanguard for tonight. I mean, it could have been in the view, and I just can't see it on my screen for some reason. I mean, it could have been too dim for the moonlight. Could have been, because I know as it tumbles, it changes in brightness. And at certain times, this camera can't see it just for, a few seconds at a time. It's possible I could have passed it and not seen it. It's now about to go into Earth's shadow. It's reaching that point, I think, according to what. Yep, it's in Earth's shadow now. Yeah, we lost it. Okay, so we'll go to Telstar 1. Whoa, 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 whoa. What the hell? Oh, hell. Well, that's not good. We just had a major deck runaway. I don't know if that's because of the tracking software, or if I just... might scare me to death. Oh. Oh, okay. Pull the cable. Oh, man. That scared me to death. Oh, jeez. Oh, man. Yeah, the telescope pulled its own cable out, partially. Just enough to cause what we call deck runaway with ALX 200s. Which is a really scary situation because it can collide with its own mount and blow itself up if it goes the wrong way. So I had to shut the telescope off in an emergency. We're now back, but it's lost its ability to know where it is. The telescope doesn't know where its minute further satellite is going to last a little bit longer in the sky. So we might still be able to get it. But man alive, that was scary. Because you can lose the entire telescope if you're not careful when that happens. So I had to shut it off because I shut off the tracking and it still kept going. That's when you know you're in real bad shape. Okay. So now obviously I'm pointed at the moon. Yeah, that also caused the telescope to go out of focus. You know, that might have been part of it too. I might have lost focus due to mirror flop, which reduces the brightness of everything, effectively. So, okay. That's what I was afraid of. Oh dear. So now I'm gonna try, if I can, and salvage this by realigning the telescope very quickly, if possible. And oh, go away, not you. You, yes. Okay. No. Oh, they're serious. Excellent. Okay. All right. Line on Sirius. Correct this. Where are you? Where are you? Well, that was certainly more excitement than I was planning on tonight, that's for sure. And we'll get the adrenaline going. Oh, come on. here real quick. I do with caps. There's Regulus. Beautiful. Okay. Now, theory should be reasonably well aligned. That was kind of quick and dirty, but let's see. It's reasonable enough, let's say. Perfect. Okay. Now we can try to go back to the satellite and do what we were planning to do. Okay, Telstar, 58 degrees, 59 degrees, west ascending, go. This time, try not to pull your own cable out. That's why you really have to babysit this thing, make sure it doesn't kill itself. Okay, let's increase exposure time. Oh, you know what? Let's connect. You know, turning off the telescope while it was still connected to the computer and then leaving it like that when I turn it back on probably makes the tracking unsmoothly. Telescope again. Right. Let's see what we can do. That. Oh, there it is. There it was. There it is. There it is. There. Why did it disappear? I don't understand. Why'd it go away? It's a star streaking through. But I swear I saw it. Believe me. I swear I saw it. me stop the tracking for a second. I'm going to try to ping my clock here on this computer, synchronize it with atomic time, and there we go, because that can sometimes help. Okay. See, I don't know, it's crazy. It's like I'm not getting the ability to really see the dimmest stuff I should be able to see. Oh, what was that? Is that just from a hiccup in tracking? I saw a star. Keep seeing things. I tell you what, I'm starting to be really tempted. I brought the S-Big camera with me. I'm really kind of tempted to just slap it on quickly and fire it up. I know I can never do it in time. It takes time to get the S-Big fired up, but I tell you what, I'm starting to think this would have been a lot easier with the S-Big. Oh! I saw it. Just adjusting the brightness and contrast settings of the AMCAP here. Thinking maybe that'll help, maybe. Oh, what do we have? We have it! And then it's gone. What in the world? It's like right here. I saw it right off to your right. I thought I saw it. And then I stopped adjusting to let it sit there, and it just vanished. It might be rotating, it might be flaring. We can only see when it flares? Maybe? You know what? Let me try something else here. Normally I don't go to this, but I think this calls for it. Oh, well, that would be part of the problem. Why did I not have that on? Oh, that would be the problem right there. Forgot I turned off AGC. Automatic gain control. Now we can see stars. Lots of them. Oh, I feel like such a dummy. Forgot my automatic gain control. Okay. Let's go back, reset everything back to 0. And see if we can find ourselves a satellite, eh? See all these wonderful, beautiful stars streaking by. I make wavy lines because I'm moving the guidance around trying to find it. Satellite. There. There. See it flaring? There it is. It's right on your right. And it faded out. So it is experiencing flaring. Okay, now I'm moving it up to the center. Moving it up to center. There it is. Beautiful. So this is Telstar 1. World's first active communication satellite. It's right in the center now. There's a bunch of hot pixels, so it's hard to distinguish, but it's getting brighter now. You can see it right in the center. Beautiful. Well, now I understand why we didn't see Vanguard 1. I forgot to turn automatic gain control back on after we looked at Jupiter. It's not something you normally use for planets, but it is definitely necessary to see dim objects like these satellites. Tracking's going a little bit wonky here. You see it moving sort of down in the view, reaching the meridian here. And when it hits the meridian, it's going to do its automatic turnaround to untangle its cord. So we're going to lose it briefly, but we'll regain it. I'll also try increasing exposure length here if I can. We'll go for 2-second exposures. Might make it, yeah, it makes it a little more obvious where it is. There's just so much stuff to remember with satellite tracking like this. It's a difficult hobby, but very fun and rewarding when you do find your target like this. So Telstar 1 was launched in 1962. This is the most recent satellite that we're taking a look at tonight. But even then, it's 53 years old this year. Of course, none of these satellites are operational anymore, but Telstar 1 only lasted a few months before experiencing electrical failure. But there were other satellites in that series that were launched, Telstar 2, Telstar 3, so on and so forth. And with them, we developed transatlantic communication in real time, over on TV. I should say broadcast transatlantic communication in real time. So you can see it's just a little above center and just slightly to the right in the view on your end. Try to center it up a little bit here. Well, I feel awfully silly. I'm sorry about Vanguard. I'll take the fault on that. I botched that up royally. I'm forgetting my automatic gain control here, but we can do that again another night. It'll be up there for a long time to come. It's just rare that these three satellites all happen to be visible all in the same night from the same location. And here comes the quarter entangle maneuver. Use the satellite for a minute here. The current range of the satellite is 5,737 kilometers. So you're looking at quite the distant object. Quarter entangle maneuver is obviously completed now. You can start to see the satellite again. They're just above center. It's just a faint little star, and you see all the other stars streaking by. Chances are this is the first time anyone's gone looking for this particular satellite in quite a long time. It's now about 5,756 kilometers away. Its velocity is 18,000 miles or 18,000 kilometers an hour, and yeah, it's not a particularly large device. It's a little bit larger than Vanguard, but still quite an amazing thing to be able to see that far away. Now you may be wondering, you may be asking yourself, well, if you can see this, why can't you see the equipment left on the moon, right? Because that's much larger than this, and sure, it's a little farther away too, but 5,000 kilometers, almost 6,000, that's nothing to sneeze at. You're starting to look at maybe, what, about 2% the distance to the moon? It's not a huge number, but starting to look at a significant percentage of the distance to the moon. So why can't maybe even a bigger telescope see the equipment left on the moon? Well, there's no telescope on Earth big enough to resolve it. See, here I can get away with not having to actually resolve the shape. It's obviously too small, too far away to resolve the shape. Something like ISS, I can see the shape, I can see the solar panels, the sections of the station, all that stuff. But just this little ball of metal out in space, 6,000 kilometers away, I don't have to resolve the shape. I just have to detect the light from it. And that's what we're seeing here. That's why it looks like a star, a point-like light source. And so that's relatively easy to do. Oh, nice little flare there in brightness. Look at that. It suddenly got a lot brighter. Getting a lot brighter. Wow. Holy cow. That was impressive. Wow, that was quite a change in magnitude there. I almost wonder if that would have been naked eye magnitude. I tried to look up. I didn't see it, but it's with all the moonlight, it's pretty hard to see anything right now tonight. But I almost wonder if that would have been visible by eye, that flare. Probably got a sun glint off one of those solar panels. They're more like solar cells. They're not really panels on that thing. But with the moon, then the equipment left on the moon from Apollo, you can't do it like this. It can't just be a point-like light source of light. You have to actually see it. You have to actually be able to resolve it because you have the moon as a backdrop, obviously. So you're not going to be able to see it as a star-like object on the moon. It's about the same reflectivity as the moon. Certainly not more reflective enough to be able to pick it out against the lunar surface. So you have to actually resolve the shape of the thing. And there's only one piece of optical equipment that mankind has ever made which is currently capable of doing that, and that is the LROC camera on the LRO, the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter. And it has done so. It's imaged all of the Apollo landing sites multiple times at pretty much any given time of day that you could want to see it. You can see it at all kinds of different solar angles, and you can see the lunar descent stage. You can see the rover. You can even pick out a pixel or two of the flag shadow on some of the sites. And you can see the trails of the rover's tracks, the trails of the astronauts' tracks on the earlier missions. Like Apollo 12, they went and visited the lunar, was it Surveyor? Oh, I'm going to get that name wrong, aren't I? I want to say was it Surveyor probe? For some reason, I want to say Surveyor probe, but that doesn't sound right to me, but it probably is right. Let's see. Apollo 12. Surveyor? Yeah, Surveyor 3. I was right. Okay. Yeah, so they went and visited the Surveyor probe, which was an unmanned probe that already landed on the moon, and they were doing that not only to recover a part of that probe and study the long-term exposure to space, but also practice precision landing, to be able to prove to themselves that they could put the lunar module exactly where they wanted it. I wonder if that was a double star or am I out of focus? No, it's a double star. I saw that dual streak go by. That was a dual star right there. That was cool. So they landed next to the Surveyor probe, and you can see the trail of the astronauts going to it and then going back to the lunar module around this crater. And they had a little cart with them, kind of like a caddy, almost like you would take golfing with you, but it carried some of their equipment and the rocks and samples that they brought back. And so you can see the trail of that thing, actually. It's pretty impressive. But yeah, that is the only device it's made that is currently, it's because it's orbiting the moon at a very low altitude. So it's about the same size as my telescope, the LROC optic, but obviously much, much closer to the moon. So that's what I have to do. I have to be orbiting the landing dot limit, the limit of resolution. No way around it. So yeah, two out of three ain't bad, right? I feel bad about Vanguard 1. We didn't get to see Vanguard 1, but I have actually recorded that before. You can go check it out on my channel. If you search for Vanguard satellite, I'm like the first or second video you're going to come to on YouTube. And it was a couple of years ago, but it looked pretty much like this, only Vanguard experiences more drastic changes in brightness. We saw that one nice flare off of Telstar here. That'll be nice. I think I might take some of this video and use it in the follow-up video where I present the still pictures that I happen to have from NASA, and put that with it, because that was a really nice flare of brightness there that we got to see. If you speed that up, it'll probably look pretty cool. So yeah, Telstar 1 is now just that little faint dot near the center. Try to increase the brightness here. Try to increase exposure. We were at 2 seconds, now we're going to 4 seconds. I don't know how much that actually helps. Excuse me. I don't know how much that actually helps. Maybe a little bit, but yeah, not a whole heck of a lot. It just kind of increases the overall light. A lot of that's from the moon. Not exactly the night for deep space imaging, that's for sure. Wow. Well, had a scary close call there with the telescope when that deck run away, but managed to save it, managed to not blow up my equipment, and managed to recover from that error and capture Telstar. Asked about if I can zoom in on Mars or Ceres. Well, Mars is already set. That sets really early in the evening. It's not really too good to observe the scope anymore, but it'll be around again. In fact, the next apparition of Mars should be pretty good. When is that? Gosh, I want to say 2016? Off the top of my head. Ceres. Where is Ceres at? Obviously, Ceres is a hot topic right now, since the Dawn mission is just arriving there. And we'll be studying Ceres up close. It's actually the first... Ceres isn't visible right now. It's actually the first probe to orbit more than one celestial body beyond the Earth and Moon. Obviously, other probes have gone by more than one celestial body, but it's actually orbiting it, not just flying by. Yeah, Ceres doesn't rise until about 4 a.m. No bueno. It would be cool to see that, but you wouldn't see much. It would look kind of like a really bright star, but it would move, of course, against the background stars if you watch long enough. Really easy to see satellites moving against background stars, though. So, yeah, Telstar will just... it's going to stay up for, gosh, how long? About another 20 minutes. Man, I'm surprised how quickly time has flown, actually, because it's up for more than an hour between rising and setting. Of course, some of that time was spent trying to find Vanguard and failing at it, but yeah, Telstar's up for a long time tonight, which is good. Wouldn't have been able to catch it after that deck runaway if it hadn't been up for a long while. But yeah, I don't have any NASA photographs related to Vanguard, actually, so the main two I was personally really keen on getting were Tiros and Telstar, because I haven't got them before, and I do have some original NASA photos related to their launches. Not necessarily the first launches of each program, but some of their sister satellites. Which are basically identical. Alright, well, I think people are probably getting tired of staring at a small fading dot at this point. I think somebody said they wished something would explode while I'm watching it. Well, I think we could pretty much rest assured that Telstar is not going to explode. It doesn't really have anything to explode with at this point, that's for sure. But, I mean, that satellite's been dead for 50 years, but we can point at the moon and finish up with that, and I'm sure people will be interested in seeing that as a finale. Go back to fast exposures. We'll stop the tracking and slew the telescope to the moon. Now, of course, this is basically as zoomed out as this camera can get on the telescope. Even then, as you can see, you can't fit the entire moon in the field of view. It's just too big. Tycho Copernicus crater there. But you guys probably want to see it up close anyway, right? So let's do that. Apologies for the awful noise here. I don't know why it's so noisy today. It's just me unthreading the focal reducer off the camera. So yeah, I'll include a link to the satellite tracker software in the video description. You can try it yourself. Works great. Obviously, it performed flawlessly tonight, even if the telescope had a hiccup, and even if I had a hiccup setting the camera. But the tracking software is actually working just fine. Now, I don't know if it's still free. I assume it is. Now, back when I bought it years ago, it's been about 11 years now that I bought that software. It was about $30, but I think now it's free. And it is a lot of fun, especially tracking the space station. You can really see some detail in just about any telescope. It's going to show you some level of detail with the space station, with the solar panels and all of that. So that's pretty good. Oh, that's not bad. The little circles, that's dust on the CCD of the camera. The circles that you see not moving. But yeah, I'd like to try to get as much of the edge of the moon here where you can see some of the craters and shadows in the craters. There's still some interesting stuff to see on even on the full moon night. It's just not as much of the moon where you really get those shadows in the craters. But one interesting thing that you do get to see is like at the edges here where you can see the lunar terminator, the divider between day and night on the moon. You got a complex crater here at the center at the top, which has a central peak rising up out of the crater. It looks like a tower inside the moon. And it's actually a central peak inside of what we call a complex crater, where the impact was so large that you have an upbound, kind of like a mountain form in the center of the crater. And you get that in larger craters. Smaller craters aren't, the impacts aren't big enough to produce that, but larger ones do. That's a natural feature, actually. But you can see it there. You can even see its shadow on the opposite wall of the crater, so it's pretty cool. You kind of have this edge-on view of a crater that you wouldn't normally get necessarily quite like that on any other night. Wow, dew formation tonight's pretty vigorous. My Pelican cases I store on my equipment are just soaked. That's all about. Also street it. Looks like a truck with a U-Haul, small U-Haul trailer, but he's got some sort of service light on top flashing. Well, if I were doing deep space imaging, I might be concerned about that just because it's rather bright flashing light, almost kind of in the same region, well, not the same region the telescope's point, but yeah, straight light from that could be it. If we're doing long exposures, that might be a problem right now. I'm not, so it doesn't matter. But yeah, once again, the telescope is altitude azimuth aligned right now, so that's why Mereprisium here is at the top, what appears to be the top of the moon. Really, it's on the side, and it's not that the moon's literally laying on its side, it's that we're looking at the sky here in an altitude and azimuth perspective, and so field rotation comes into play, and that's where my moon calculation spreadsheet comes into play, because it'll tell you how many degrees from vertical the moon should appear to be, etc., etc. The bobbing up and down is just tracking and accuracy mostly of the telescope in altitude azimuth configuration. Most nights I've got it polar aligned, and it's a lot smoother than altitude azimuth is kind of the standard alignment procedure for mostly visual observing, because you have field rotation, which is going to ruin long exposures, and the tracking's not quite as accurate because you're using 2 worm gears instead of 1 to track with the motion of the sky. So there's twice the periodic error overlaid on top of each other, and so the tracking's not as accurate, and that's why you kind of get this bobbing motion like I'm on the ocean or something, but I'm not, and it's not wind, it's just tracking. But that's why altitude azimuth is really for visual observing. It's easier to do, it's faster setup time. If you're not going to be doing long exposure imaging, if you're just going to do casual observing like this, it's the best way to go just because it's easier. But I used it tonight again, mostly because of the fact that we were doing satellite tracking and the fact that it provides more stability for the telescope against vibration, because obviously the scope's moving a lot to keep up with the satellites, to track with them. And in polar alignment, that's going to send vibrations down into the mountain and just shake the whole thing. And you won't see the satellites as well then. So that's why it's in altitude azimuth mode tonight. Also, I had to set up as early as possible, so I couldn't have even seen Polaris, the North Star, when I did the setup. Polar alignment wouldn't have been possible at that time. I would have had to wait longer and wouldn't have been able to even get Tiros at the beginning of the evening. Just wouldn't have had time. So. Anyway, let's pan around the moon here some more, I guess, and see what else we can see. Here we can find some little green men. See the mountains on the edges of the moon. It's not quite as smooth a surface as you might think just by looking by eye. It looks nice and perfectly circular, but in reality, it's not so perfect. See, I really like this camera though. It's nice and gives nice, really sharp images. Kind of does in-camera sharpening on the images. Keep coming back here though, because I really think this is the prettiest spot on the moon tonight. Just pan through the center here just so you guys can see it. But like I said, it's kind of flat and featureless when it's full like this. And you can see the craters, they look like white circles where the rims are, but it kind of looks flat. You don't really get a sense of perspective of the depth of the craters without the shadows in them. Aircrisium is pretty nice there, though. That's that circular dark region you see in the center. And you never know, we might get a random satellite passing in front of the moon if we watch long enough. Chances are we'd probably not be looking at the right part of the moon at that time, just because we see a portion of it here. I could throw it on the wide field refractor and you can see the whole thing, but not nearly in as high resolution. I much prefer looking at individual craters up close and personal. Feels almost like you're in a spaceship right at the moon. And hopefully, like I said, by next time we do this, I'll have some stellar drone music playing in the background. I've got permission now to do that, so I'm looking forward to that. I think that'll add a lot to the atmosphere of these webcasts. I know they can be a little bit slow-paced, but it's just how amateur astronomy is sometimes. On the other hand, tracking satellites is one of the most high-intensity, adrenaline-rushing sorts of things you can do. I mean, my heart leapt out of my chest tonight when the telescope decided to do a deck runaway, and that's just how it is. You have to really babysit things when you're tracking satellites, because anything can go wrong, and some of it can even damage the telescope. So you really have to be careful. Definitely don't try it unless you really know what you're doing with your telescope. If you just bought it yesterday, don't subject it to that. Don't try it, because you could very easily damage your own equipment. So So I've also set the telescope to the average lunar tracking rate. Obviously, the moon's not moving through the sky. The sidereal rate, it is orbiting the Earth. And you can set the LX200 to track at the average lunar rate, but that's just an average. The moon's orbit's also slightly eccentric, so sometimes it's moving faster than others. So your tracking on the moon is not going to be perfect unless you do something else. Unless you set up some sort of program to manually track or to automatically track on the moon, similar to how I was tracking on those satellites. Or, I don't know, maybe auto guide on the moon. It's not really necessary. It's pretty easy to keep up with, but basically I'm just manually guiding on the moon here, just tapping it over when necessary to keep it where I want to keep it. So if you happen to have a telescope and you've got a clock drive on it or some sort of tracking system and you put it on the moon and you notice the moon moving, it is moving. You're actually seeing the orbital motion of the moon relative to the stars over time. You'd be surprised at how much that actually builds up in the course of a night. I need to check on my corrector plate though, see how much dew I've got. Oh, quite a bit. I was afraid of that. You guys may have seen some red light shining into the telescope just now. I'm just checking on my corrector plate. Oh dear. I should have powered up the dew heaters a little bit stronger for the, it's really, the air is really still tonight. The dew formation is just incredible, so I'd only had it at 50% power, and that wasn't nearly enough. I cranked it up to 100%, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to completely heat off the dew. Just thinking in terms of tearing down the telescope, I don't like to put it away with moisture on it like that, especially on the corrector plate. I can take it, I've done this before, it's kind of annoying, but I can take it inside my car, keep it in the passenger seat, kind of strap it in there, and turn on the heaters inside the car and just heat up the inside of the car until it melts off the dew. That's what I'm going to have to do. So yeah, maybe look at this and saying, asking yourself, well, how come you're able to see shadows in the craters at all? It was in the full moon tonight. Well, it is, though technically, full moon is a moment in time where it's at the fullest of the month, and even then, it's not directly opposite the sun in the sky. If it were directly opposite the sun from Earth, it would be in Earth's shadow and you'd have a lunar eclipse. So you'll always be able to see some hint of a shadow somewhere around the edge of the moon, even on a full moon if you look with a telescope. Earlier in the evening, the moon, according to my telescope's computer, was reading at 99.9% full. Right now it's reading at 99.8, so we're actually past that time of full moon. It's technically waning gibbous now. Very, very gibbous. I mean, really, it's a full moon evening, but past the point of fullest moon. got a distinct scent of cigarette smoke, but there's no one around. Kind of creepy. I guess there was somebody over there in a Hummer. Maybe it was them smoking. I don't know. Could have sworn I smelled cigarette smoke, but nobody close by. Anyway. Good news with all the moonlight is I could see anyone if they were trying to sneak up on me. Alright, I think we'll take one more look at Jupiter here, and then I'll call it a night. In case anyone missed it earlier, we were taking a look at Jupiter between the satellites. Is Jupiter. I don't know why I'm digitally zooming on Jupiter. I don't have just got a focus. Okay, so I guess that's fine. I have AGC. No. Okay. I guess it's good. Now, if you were watching earlier, you might have noticed that the rings have tilted a bit since we were watching earlier. It's now a little bit different. And that's, again, because of field rotation. It will change over the course of the night. It'll actually go more horizontal as it gets ready to cross the meridian. This wouldn't be happening if I were polar aligned, but I've already explained the reasons why I'm not polar aligned. It's also somewhat potentially rewarding to watch Jupiter for a prolonged period of time, because if you watch long enough, you might just catch an impact happening to Jupiter. Amateurs have caught a few in the last few years, and it's kind of a new thing because of video astronomy, just like this, where there's amateurs all over the world watching Jupiter basically every night that it's visible, and recording long videos of it. Professional observatories don't tend to focus on the major planets that much unless it's for a specific program, which is generally a very limited period of time. So amateurs tend to be the ones to catch transient events like that. And until recently, it would have just been in some crazy report. Oh, I saw a flash on Jupiter. Oh, sure you did. You had a problem with your eye. Well, now we can capture a video of it and prove it. Pretty much everyone can afford digital imaging these days, so it's widespread and it's very handy. Makes things possible that have never really been possible in human history, this sort of constant monitoring of what's going on in the sky. And I keep having to adjust it because I forgot to take it off the lunar rate. So it's tracking the lunar rate, not the sidereal rate. Planets move much closer to the sidereal rate. There we go. Still not exactly the sidereal rate. They are orbiting the sun as well and moving through space. And we're orbiting the sun and moving relative to them. So if you watch on a long enough time lapse, you will still see planets moving relative to the stars. For instance, when I did the observing session of sighting spring passing by Mars, you could see Mars moving as well as the comet as they approached each other, which was kind of cool. In about 5 minutes, we'll wrap up for the evening. I'd originally kind of planned for this to be maybe 2.5 hour webcast, but it was nice. We got to see a couple satellites and Jupiter and the Moon. It's not too bad. Like I said, this weekend I'll try my hand at tracking ISS if the weather allows. Probably do that offline, but I just want to see how well it works with the Attic Titan camera as a viewfinder camera instead of my old Meade LPI, which won't work on Windows 7. If any of you guys actually know how to make a Meade LPI work on Windows 7, let me know in the comments, please. Maybe somebody out there has a solution for that. I have not found functioning drivers, though. I've tried, I think I tried something, but I don't know if it was from Meade or some third party. It didn't work, whatever it was I tried. I could not get it to work under Windows 7, so... No, I think one solution was to do a virtual machine, an XP virtual machine inside Windows. It's like, that's just way too complicated. That's just too much complexity to add on top of what is already an already extremely complex task, and that is tracking the space station. The easier and simpler I can keep it, the better, because otherwise I make mistakes. Like the AGC thing earlier tonight. I added complexity. I added viewing Jupiter in the middle of trying to track satellites. Probably should have waited on that, but it's okay. So, yeah, if anyone knows a solution, though, an easy solution, let me know. It doesn't involve virtual machines. Because I can't figure out a way to make that work, but that's okay. We'll just, I'll try to work around it and just use the wide field refractor of the Attic Titan camera if I can, because that will work under Windows 7. Provided that gives me enough field of view to capture ISS and get it in the main telescope, then I'll be good. A lot of webcasts lately been focused on deep space and a lot of S-Big work. That S-Big camera, it's a fantastic camera, and we get to do some amazing things with it, like seeing that Schultz's star, for instance. I mean, I didn't really see too many news articles with actual pictures of Schultz's star, so it's nice to be able to actually see that. But I think I might be getting carried away with it a little too much in terms of neglecting planetary imaging and lunar imaging and satellite tracking. There's a lot to be done, a lot of interesting things to look at. And while the S-Big camera is fantastic for deep space and distant objects like that, it's not actually particularly well suited for, say, imaging Jupiter or trying to track satellites. Then again, you also don't have to adjust automatic gain control to suddenly start to see the satellites properly. So there's that. But in general, it's really optimized for deep space work, distant galaxies, really distant solar system objects, comets, and Kuiper Belt objects, things like that. To me, that camera's still sort of a new toy to play with, and I'm really enjoying seeing what it can really do. The Samsung camera I've had for a while now, and it's pretty much what you see is what you get. You get a pretty basic camera that can do some limited deep space, but it's mostly, I mean, it is really good for lunar planetary stuff. There are better cameras, but they're way more money. I mean, if you're on a budget, then this is certainly, I think, the best way to go is the Samsung STC 435. In its price range, you're not going to find anything else that beats it, I think. put it this way, the list of objects you can view with it is somewhat limited. I mean, you're not going to be able to go after, say, Schultz's star with this camera. For that, you need a nice deep space camera like this big. Different tools for different jobs, right? I think somebody asked a question, though, about this camera. It is, like I said, it's an SDC435 Samsung. It's actually a security camera. If you search for CCTV cameras and suppliers of CCTV cameras, you're going to find a similar model. They don't sell it under this name anymore, I think. It's called I want to say it's the SCB2000. But if you Google SDC435, you'll find the equivalent model that they currently sell. It's identical. And you just you get yourself what I have right now is actually a C-mounted T-thread adapter, and then a T-thread to 1 1/4 inch eyepiece adapter. But you can get I'm pretty sure you can get a straight C-mount to 1 1/4 inch eyepiece adapter, and then you can plug it into just about any telescope and use it for astrophotography. So that's how that works. This particular camera, I've modified for infrared sensitivity. I've removed the infrared blocking filter from it, so it will receive infrared light as well. But even straight out of the box, it's a pretty good camera. So I hope you guys enjoyed the webcast. Again, I'll put the link to the satellite tracking software in the video description. And then I'll work on finishing up my digitization, my scanning of the old NASA photos of Telstar and Tiros, and put that into a new video later. So hope you guys have a good rest of the week, and clear skies, folks. Thanks for watching.